I'm currently enrolled in the Doctor of Musical Arts program in Voice Performance and Pedagogy at the University of Toronto under the supervision of Professor Lorna MacDonald. And in June last year, 2020, my thesis proposal was unanimously accepted by the reading committee. The title of my thesis reads, An Interpretive and Pedagogical Guide to the Vocal Repertoire of John Beckwith. This thesis examines the compositions of John Beckwith for solo voice and piano, creating an interpretive and pedagogical guide to these works. The guide not only examines his well-known works, but also the lesser-known or yet to be recorded, one of which is making its first appearance today. In order to disseminate the repertoire among voice performers, teachers, and institutions. Beckwith's vast collection of Canadian folk music arrangements, over 200 in total, will be omitted in favour of a deeper focus on his original compositions for voice and piano. Two questions predominate. Firstly, what does Beckwith deem to be a successful performance and interpretation of his music? Secondly, are Beckwith's songs appropriate for a wide or narrow range of levels and abilities? This guide contains detailed annotations of his 46 songs for voice and piano. Annotated information includes date of composition, voicing, vocal ranges, tessitura, performance, song duration, text sources, and complete texts, a brief poetry synopsis, publisher information, debut performance, and commissioners. Annotations will also include specific statements about the songs from Beckwith, with indications from him as to how performers can interpret each song in order to create that successful performance. This project will also serve the pedagogical function of assisting voice teachers to assign repertoire to their students, and in particular, voice teachers who may not be familiar with the works of John Beckwith. It has been reported by John Nix in Criteria for Selecting Repertoire, Journal of Singing, 58, few singers are able to overcome difficulties caused by a repertoire that is not suited for their voices. It is the teacher's task to carefully choose repertoire that ensures success and progress while it challenges but does not defeat the student. Christopher Arneson, who has actually provided advice and suggestions for the Royal College Music Graded Vocal Series, also writes, repertoire serves an important pedagogic function. Selection of appropriate literature can advance singing techniques in areas of breathing, phonation, registration, articulation, and expressions. Teachers frequently assign literature that is too difficult or does not address specific pedagogic goals. Therefore, selecting appropriate repertoire is an important consideration in voice teaching. It is my intention to empower singers and teachers to make informed and goal-orientated repertoire decisions in the study and performance of Beckwith songs. With this in mind, the interpretive and pedagogical guide will include a grading rubric that assesses the level of difficulty of each song composition. This will reveal whether there is a level of singer best suited to specific Beckwith songs and whether his songs are appropriate for a wide or narrow range of levels and abilities. This thesis also includes the personal and professional history of John Beckwith, focusing on his career, his careers in academia, education, writing, and composition, and his impact on the Canadian music scene. Research will include conversations with John Beckwith himself, exploring his song repertoire, his compositional approach to the genre, his interactions and collaborations with poets, performers, and organizations, and how Canadian identity and expression are revealed in his music. I believe that this research will be of significant value to Canadian studies, performance, voice studies, voice pedagogy, and musicology. Furthermore, the value of my research is significantly increased by the primary source involvement of the composer himself. While scholarship on John Beckwith, the composer, the teacher, the scholar, is plentiful, his vocal repertoire, with few exceptions, has been generally overlooked. There is no comprehensive catalogue of his songs, nor is there a single comprehensive source providing an interpretive or pedagogical guide. My research seeks to build on the material already in circulation while providing both a pedagogical and performance lens into the art songs of one of Canada's most respected composers. John Beckwith has been a prominent voice in the Canadian music scene during the second half of the 20th century and the first 2 decades of the 21st century. To date, Beckwith has written over 150 compositions, including 4 operas, a dozen orchestral works, chamber and solo works, songs, works for chorus, as well as those 200 arrangements of Canadian folk music. In the field of scholarly writing, Beckwith has over 70 publications to his name, including books, book chapters, dictionary entries, articles, and reviews. In academia, Beckwith began lecturing in composition and piano at the University of Toronto in 1952. He was the Dean of the Faculty of Music from 1970 to 1977. And when the faculty established the Institute for Canadian Music in 1984, he was appointed its first director, as well as the first holder of the Jean A. Chalmers Professorship in Canadian Music. He retired from the university in 1990 and is the holder of no less than 5 honorary doctorates. Whew! As it stands, I have interviewed John 8 times for a total of about 12 hours. I would love to say I have all the juiciest gossip of the Canadian music scene for the past 70 years on record, but that would be a lie. It's been all business. So if there are any gossip columnists watching and willing to pay the big bucks for exclusive material, I'm sorry to disappoint you. At this point, I must thank John for being so giving of his time, for being so gracious, for going over every one of his songs with me, and especially for putting up with me when I ask questions like, is there a reason that for most of your songs you don't use a key signature? Or, in your opinion, what constitutes a good singing melody? I have a long way to go before my thesis is written, and John has told me he will be available for me anytime. So thank you, John. Now, it would be cruel of me to leave you hanging and not answer those 2 questions. So here are the answers. For question 1, John doesn't like to use key signatures because he finds it restrictive. He says, you can't expect a singer to be governed by a tonality. For question 2, John's answer to what constitutes a good singing melody all of a sudden had me contemplating all the big questions like, why are we here? I'm sure his answer will make you laugh. To answer this question, John mentions that Puccini once said on the topic, 1 note. A good singing melody constitutes 1 note. And to provide examples, we began to sing the opening of 4 of his most memorable arias. Che gelida manina, from La Bohème, E lucevan le stelle, from Tosca, Nessun dorma, Turandot, and then Tre spiri una carrozza, of course the Te Deum from Puccini's Tosca once more. So there you have it. All the Beatles needed was love. All that John Beckwith needed was 1 note. But before I finish today, there are a couple of major aspects to John's composition that I wish to discuss. How it was that he came to writing song and the method with which he approached this musical genre. From 1945 to 1949, John was a student at the University of Toronto studying piano under the tutelage of Alberto Guerrero, about whom John wrote an acclaimed biography in 2006. Other students of Guerrero included William Ade, Stuart Hamilton, Pierrette Lepage, Glenn Gould, Bruce Mather, Oscar Morowitz, R. Murray Schafer, and Ruth Watson Henderson, to name a few. Accepted as a pianist, John made himself available as an accompanist, both coaching singers privately and accompanying them during lessons. He writes in his memoir, Unheard of, Memoirs of a Canadian Composer, I acquired quick sight-reading ability and good knowledge of the standard song repertoires. It is during this time that John learnt what the voice could do, some vocal technique, as well as the growing song repertoire. Beckwith began composing during his first year, but it wasn't until 1947 that he began composing song. Analyzing and listening to his early songs, I noticed that the music seemed to have a sense of form and tonality similar to those of the classical or romantic period. Mentioning this to John, I was informed that he had no formal training during these early years, and so he wrote based on what he knew, influenced primarily by Schumann, Schubert, and Debussy. Looking at his songs critically, I would say the voice that I identify as Beckwith's comes into his works after his studies in Paris with Nadia Boulanger. The songs with texts by E. Cummings or Margaret Lawrence come to mind. What I find to be fascinating is determining a composer's compositional process. For John, he began with the text, creating a rhythmic sketch of how the words would go. He would speak the texts aloud, paying attention to where there are accents and where there are pauses. He would speak the text, he would write the text out, including stresses and pauses, and then from here, the rhythm would flow naturally according to the contour of the language. The recitative style in Singing Sing is a perfect example of the beginning of this process. However, this was not always his approach. Sometimes he began sketching a harmonic framework first, as was the case with the second Waddington song. With whatever method he began, his ultimate goal remained the same: to get something agreeable across to the audience, to get across the literary background, and if there was no background, then the sonority of the syllables. Thank you, John, for giving us such a rich collection of songs that we can not only spend today enjoying, but for years to come. Happy birthday.